Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
All right. So tonight we are going to be talking about, by the way, tonight is episode 111. 111.
Episode 111. All right.
So that's pretty cool.
I like it.
Tonight we're going to be talking about objectification. I feel like you and I have actually talked about it a little bit on the podcast before. I was thinking about it about 20 minutes before. I was like, oh, while this would have been a really interesting topic to get Matthew's nonstop jokes about, we can have a deep discussion about it.
An actual deep discussion rather than a bunch of half sexual innuendo between Matthew and I.
Yeah, I also like that we can just completely talk shit about Matthew when he's not on the podcast because he doesn't listen.
He doesn't listen when he's not on. He said it.
So objectification.
It was the episode where we talked about it was. Let me see. It was one of our complex episodes. Not the people pleaser one, but what was it? The one where I told the entire world that I'm the best lay I'll ever have.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. So let me explain why I wanted to talk about this. So that last year in November I did National Novel Writing Month.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote from November 1st till November 30th, and then I stopped and I put it down and I didn't touch it again until about 5 weeks ago.
Oh wow, nice.
So I've been editing. I am like real close. I have 330 pages. I am real close to having, we'll say, a first draft, but technically, like the stuff that I've already written, I've now edited 3 times. So it's like but I haven't completed certain.
What style? Short fiction,
like literary fiction.
Okay.
But the main premise of the idea, without giving away too much, is it is kind of exploring the idea of getting both of your sexual nature and your more the things that we're trained against sexual nature, essentially in our lives. So like growing up Catholic, like purity culture and sexual nature, and kind of, shaking one to like kind of give yourself a healthy balance. So similar to the Madonna horror complex, but very much in the there's parts where it's, essentially the character is an incel, and then we see in a time before
I
incel.
remember this one.
Yes.
I remember this one. Yes.
So I'm writing the book, and I wrote a short story about 10 years ago or so, in which it was about a guy who had been cheating on his wife for a long time, like decades, and he was, he was a piece of shit character. And
by the way, wives, it's neither of us. In case you're wondering, it's not either of us.
And
this is not nonfiction.
The novel is closer to nonfiction than the short story. But so I was writing the short story. I wrote it, and I always want women to read my stuff to give me feedback, because I'm writing about, as a heterosexual person, I'm writing about heterosexual relationships more often than not. And I realize that I have gaps in that. And when I wrote that story, I let several women read it, and I thought I made the mistress was really like a lovely person, and the wife was a pretty lovely person, and the husband was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And every woman that I let read it, and a couple of guys that I let read it, the women were like, well, the mistress is a whore, and I hate her. She's such a fucking slut. Like just like hardcore, bad. You
wanted her to be a villain, like from the get. This wasn't a development.
I did not. My audience kept saying that. I was trying to make you like her. I was trying to make the bad guy.
Wow.
And so I was like, I think there's an extension to which it's internalized misogyny. And I think there's an extension to which it is probably I'm not a good enough writer to pull off what I was trying to do. and or there's some level it's hard to tell exactly
Yeah.
where we fall in that, because
Okay.
I thought I wrote this lovely character, but I also like don't shy away in that story and in my book, because sex plays such an important part. I can't like shy away from it, and I can't
No.
just be like, and they started kissing and the lights turned off, like the way like a way a made for TV movie would show a sex scene. I can't
The way
do
a
that.
paperback romance novel in the library
Right.
would tell it.
I can't do that without any. There has to be some actual sex in it, and that doesn't mean that I need to. I'm trying to draw the line between pornography and realistic depiction of sex,
Yeah.
but in that process, it is like a hard balance to depict these things and to to show this nature when to people who are maybe sometimes suffering from the problems I'm trying to address. So like
Okay.
I was reading. I've been reading and editing and rewriting my novel for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and there's a lot of sex stuff in it, and then I really and I worry because I personally have a tendency to not see anybody but myself as a real person, and like to
Okay.
like I just have a hard time in that sense. Like when I'm doing characterization, so I would say that any men that I write that aren't me are probably not the best characters. But also the same thing
Okay.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
women. When you're doing it with women, it really and you're dealing with sex, it just feels like you're objectifying. So I'm trying very hard to find a balance between realistically portraying sex and making these characters whole women, like whole character, fleshed out characters, and having sexualities and not being like they had big old titties and and bouncing assholes and it,
I no. Okay. I understand that. You mentioned something that I'm curious about.
sure.
Which gender do you unknowingly make out to be a villain? Or which gender are you having an easier time making out to be a villain? Because you mentioned
Women.
that your women characters are like these mean ass bitches,
No, that's how everyone's interpreting
but that's
them,
how
and I
people are interpreting it. But you don't mean it that way.
no. And what I try to do
Okay.
when I the way that I build characters that especially when I'm trying not to make every character me, is like
Yeah.
I'll take characteristics of people I know, and I'll flesh like so like I haven't done one about you, but it would take and take character. I'll give you an example. My friend Pat, who's been on the podcast, you haven't met him because it was before you were producing. My friend Pat is there's parts of the story of the book that mirror a lot of my high school stuff. Now I've changed quite a bit. Pat is a 50% inspiration for one of the characters, and one of my other friends is because they don't necessarily need their own individual characters for I worry about building too many characters when you're like
Yeah.
you know I love Game of Thrones, but it's hard to keep up with too many characters. So I'm doing that for simplicity's sake, but also sometimes it makes sense, so that's how I try to build characters. As I would say, like, okay, if I was building a character around you, like I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm in a situation. I think Alex would be an interesting person to see how they would react to this. Now, I
Yeah.
try to change enough about you so that if something in that the character does is odd, everyone's like not like, did Alex actually eat a cat turd off the floor?
Wow. So, okay, you don't mean to objectify your
Right,
female characters.
right.
Do
But
you?
I will say though is I think that I objectify some of the male characters. I think I am just
I was going
not.
to ask you, does your audience see that too? So
I
they,
think
so the women are the ones that are like, you're making her out to be a bitch. You're like, I didn't mean it. Do
yeah.
you, when you're trying to objectify in a negative way, not in a sexual way, a male character, are you communicating that in a way that your audience is like, no, I get it, he's a dick, or are they like, no, this guy's not that much of a douche canoe, he's kind of a normal dude.
Okay,
Which is your read on from the audience on that?
So nobody's read the novel yet, other than me. So we'll base this on this short story that I wrote.
You're a horrible audience to critique your own work, then.
We'll base this conversation on the short story. So the short story, every person that I would, after I would have them read the story, they would be like, "Oh, I didn't like the mistress. I thought she was a slut whore, whatever word they decided." And I'd be like, "Really?" Because I was really trying to make you like her, and not and the guy to me is the villain. And they would be like, "Oh yeah, the guy sucks, but like he's just a guy.
Okay.
He's a guy, and I don't expect anything from a guy. I don't expect a guy to turn down sex. I don't expect a guy." And I was like, okay, so like that's why I say there's like that's internalized misogyny, right? Like that's like if a woman's saying that, like so that's why I struggle with that side of things. But then I'm like, so where am I? How much of it is me, and how much of it is I'm combating forces that are beyond?
Yeah. For real, I can understand that.
Yeah. So that's what made me think about objectification, because I am, I'm reading these things where I'm talking pretty frankly about not just sex, but like fairly, I'm not getting into like crazy detail.
So you're not trying to Anne Rice this?
I have not read any Anne Rice. I did watch the first episode of Interview with a Vampire last night on the plane, which is real weird that you just mentioned that.
Yeah, okay.
Literally two of the things that I downloaded for the plane ride. I mean, I always download like 6 or 7 in case I'm like, this sucks. So I downloaded the first episode of the show because the show looked so good. And after watching the first episode, I'm hooked. And I also downloaded the Tom Cruise movie because I happened to have gotten that in like a package where I bought like 9 movies for $10. So I downloaded both, and I was like, oh, I'm going to look like a weirdo if I start switching between Interview with the Vampires on this plane. But anyway,
well, maybe.
so I just was like reading, and reading what I'm writing, what I wrote. I don't think I have been super guilty of objectification in my writing, but I think that I can be guilty. I used to tell Sarah that the way that I would write characters like that wife and mistress, I was like, the wife side is you and the mistress is you. Like that's what I told Sarah. I was like, the mistress is it's the lady in the street and the freak in the sheets. I was like, it's because Sarah's got 2 different sides to her. She's got her. So I was like, a lot of times I build that's into things, and
she gets all red and embarrassed when you
but when I tell her that, it's like, oh, I'm kind of objectifying her, and I'm sure and and I wore gray sweatpants quite a bit this weekend. She objectified me a bit.
Very nice.
When you're not living in the same house for 5 days in a row and you're wearing gray sweatpants when you see each other during the days, she's just like, all right, what are you, teasing me over here?
I love it. Yes.
There's gonna be so much to cut out.
With my wife, it's any of my caps in the reverse fashion.
Oh.
That and thighs. If any of
I've seen quite a bit of your
thighs.
I've seen quite a bit of your thighs, so
you have. So if any of you chicks are thigh girls, apparently that's her thing. She likes them to look like tree trunks.
I'm a thigh guy. Have we not talked about that?
So do you, with the purity culture that you and I both were raised in, you Catholic, me Episcopalian, because I know when it happened for me, when did you cross over that healthy lust is not objectification? Because that was my split when I realized that being lustful and wanton for someone I'm interested in is entirely human and natural, and it's not this evil, just disgusting, degenerate thought in my head that I must pray away. So that was my split, and it was like when I was like probably right after I lost my virginity, like soon after that, I thought, there's no way that this can't be a natural thing that I want, because I want it anyway.
Yeah.
So that was mine.
I didn't. It's not a flip switch moment. The
Oh,
book's coming out soon. You'll learn all about it. No, to me, what it is like if you look, okay, lust and romantic feelings. Like I think of it as like a gauge where it's like, okay, they have to add up to
so you
100.
did lust and romance.
Lust and romance, or
Okay.
affection, or any, it doesn't
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
be romance. It could be affection. It could be. So for me, but like for me, they add up to 100, and so like you know, there was a little bit of time before it got to be like, oh, I can be 50-50 on a person. So it was like, oh, she is
Oh.
100%, she's 100%. She's 100%, she's 100%. And
Oh.
during over the course of 10 to 15 years, I'd start to they would gradually come together.
So in that episode that we both referenced earlier on, I remember specifically with my wife, I was I don't even like the word romance. I say the R word, and I realize that I can't say it like that because I mean rape.
Oh, I thought you meant the R
No.
slur.
Oh no. So so I my autism doesn't understand or like romance. I am a in fact romantic person. She tells me this, and other partners of mine have told me this, but I don't like it, nor do I think of it. I just see it as adoration.
Yeah.
I just see it as these actions of mine are because I selfishly want to see your face light up when you taste, smell, experience, see whatever the thing that I've planned, made, done, whatever. So for me, I didn't ever really feel that way with previous partners. They were 100%, I just want to knock your boots all the time. Or it was, I have this young child infatuation love for you, the
Yeah.
kind that almost borders on the kind you have for your mother,
Yeah.
because the love you have for a mother as a child is that very submissive servitude style love where you're doing things to retain their affection. So for me, I always saw women that I was interested in that were people that I was attracted to. Those would be people that I would hate to objectify. How
Hmm.
could I think of them in this way? Like if too much cleavage was showing, or her hips looked nice and wide and her waist looked all tiny, I'd be like, oh, like I would get a bad reaction that I felt that
Yeah.
way about them. But the one that I wanted to just nail up against a wall, I'm like, no, I'm supposed to think about that with them. So
Yeah.
Holly was the first that, like you mentioned, that it came into balance, and I'm like, I have this just hopeless affection for you. She got a new haircut. She hasn't had bangs or short hair this short in 12 years. She got her hair in a completely different style. She's like, you want to see? I'm like, no, I want to see it when you get to experience my face seeing it. And apparently that made her all warm and fuzzy inside. But that's just really what I want to do because I want to see that connection with her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she bends over the right way. Oh, the trousers are coming down in the kitchen. Like, come on. So objectification for me was something that, like, it feels like a negative. Objectification when I was younger during the purity phase was like, don't do it, it's bad, you you gross little boy,
Yeah.
or you gross man. And then it was, this is just what my huge testosterone filled bag of skin feels like.
Yeah.
And then it turned, like, now I'm in my early 40s, it's a kink.
Yeah.
So objectification for me is now a fun sexual device, a fun game to play. It's no longer this negative thing, nor is it even any longer this thing that I only feel towards certain people.
Hmm.
So my break on that happened soon after I lost my virginity, because I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna have regular sex, I can't sit in the front row at church, because I did, bang the girl I'm sitting next to, because I was, and then not feel a huge inner struggle. So I just said, no, objectification's cool. She looks cute. Why wouldn't I? Duh. But then now I feel it for one person. And my wife really ushered that in for me in my late 30s. I never felt like that about somebody, like ever. It was always very, and my handicap makes me understand a lot of things in very binary ways.
Yeah.
So to have anything that's that fuzzy middle, that's something that I am still trying to figure out.
Yeah.
So that was my split. After virginity, found that one person can be with two. Kink or objectification is now the kink,
Yeah.
and it isn't bad to me. But I have felt myself doing it to people on my own
Yeah.
and had a negative reaction to it. I have experienced that, and I'm going to be going to Disney. You know I'm going to be experiencing it because I'm going
Oh
to walk
yeah.
around amongst all them people.
Yeah.
You know I'm going to. I know it's going to happen. Fuck, man, right? So I don't know. I don't think it's bad.
It's not
Is it
bad
bad for
inherently.
you?
No. I think that it's one of those things where it depends on it depends on how much you let it run wild. So
Explain.
so like if you're like I think it's fine if you're if like for example, almost every single person that I'm not blood related to, male or female, I do kind of an assessment of based on their personality,
Same.
what do I think their sexual activity is like?
Mm-hmm. Oh God, I do
It
that
doesn't mean
fuck
that I
so
want
bad.
necessarily to participate in it.
No, I'm fascinated by it.
Like sometimes I'm just like, oh, that guy is like he's not conventionally handsome, but I bet he fucks.
Right.
And,
Yes.
and
No. I think that shit too.
and then occasionally there'll be a woman that I think is very very attractive, and I'm like, I bet she's boring as hell. Like so, and I do an
Oh my God,
assessment.
how is that literally the way it goes? Super pretty people
Yeah,
are dull.
because they never needed
Pedestrian.
to learn.
Well, okay, you ready? Objectification. I feel bad saying that. So hot take: ugly fat girls give good head because they had to. Now I had a plus size girl tell me that. She's like, I give great oral because big girls just have to. And I'm like, no, I've had great oral from all size and
Yeah.
age of women. So I feel bad thinking that, but what you stated brought up some objectification thoughts.
Well,
The pedestrian attractive women or women that don't have any overt sexualizing of their figure, their appearance, their
yeah.
voice, whatever, like those are the girls that want to get folded in half in a file cabinet.
Oh yeah. No,
But the super pretty girls, even if they're like coy or prude, because by the way, the super pretty girls, they come in two flavors: coy prudes or absolute full of themselves dummies, and neither of them get laid very often, in case you're wondering.
so. I think you're doing a great job of objectification right now.
I am. I know I am. So I was like, this walked right into it.
I think that obviously there is a lot of truth to those stereotypes. There can be truth to those stereotypes, but I think that when I said pretty girl, I wasn't saying that all pretty girls. I'm saying like, oh, like sometimes I look at someone and I'm like, oh, she's very pretty, but now that I've like heard her talk and I've known her person, I don't want to give an example. I feel like
I feel like someone's gonna know it's them. Is what you're trying
exactly.
to say.
Like I don't want to give any examples of people, but I have thoughts where I'm like, oh, that person's almost certainly boring in bed, and then and I'll say like, well, she's like fine, but like I bet she's a freak. Or and I do it with guys. It's not just like, oh, I'm attracted to like, sometimes I go like, oh, missionary, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. And trust me, I've looked at some people and the first I'm with you. I'm like, oh, I bet you they're boring as hell. Like seriously, it's I don't know, man. I like should because both of us are close to the same age. So do the two of us bear any responsibility to hold other people accountable when they do this?
If it's vocalized.
Or do you think we're like, no, man, I agree. Man, she's hot as hell. Man, I'd love to motorboat them. Like would we? Because I'm guilty of doing that in a social way, and as a salesperson, I am hella guilty of doing it to close a sale because I am a slut for two things: my wife and money.
Yeah.
So I will 100% tell you that I have gone against my own better judgment because
Yeah.
I am not the more I do not have the more integrity between my wife and I at
So
all.
I think it depends on circumstance. So I'm going to use a non-objectification example that I think will work.
I'm interested.
You don't know him, but you know of my best friend Adam,
Yes,
and he is a black man. The way that Adam and I talk to each other, I would not say the things about black people that I say to him in front of white people that I think could be racist, because I don't want to give them permission to unload. Whereas Adam and I have a different relationship. So I think, for example, if I say to Sarah, like I like to joke, especially like talk about like Helen Mirren or somebody who's like, I'll be like, she can get it. Like I say, like that's my Sarah kind of hates it and kind of like laughs every time. She just hates that phrasing.
Yeah.
But I'll say she can get it. And sometimes we'll be at a thing. There'll be no chance. Like there's not going to be something that's going to upset Sarah. And we'll talk about we'll objectify somebody a little bit together. Sometimes it's a guy.
Yeah.
There was a guy that she saw without his shirt on washing his car.
It's so hot when they do that. Oh,
and
Jesus Christ.
And she started talking about him, and I was like, let's loop back because I didn't really get a good look. What are we talking about?
We've both. Holly and I have gone back down aisles in the grocery store just to be like,
right.
Oh.
But if you, for example, were like a serial cheater, I wouldn't be like, hey, Alex, check out the jugs in aisle 3. Because I wouldn't be wanting to feed into bad behavior. Sometimes our nature is
okay. Would it matter if you knew my partner? Is your loyalty showing because you're just doing bro dude good stuff for me as a man? Or is it because you know my wife and you've met her and you know of this person? Like which
okay.
Would you act different if you didn't know my partner?
Possibly, but probably not.
Like I'm serious. There's because with objectification, especially in the male gaze and in the male psyche, there's obviously
I'm
much
not that
more
familiar with the male gaze. I've known some, but
I said with the male gaze as I do this pinky thing unintentionally. Jesus Christ. But there's honest. I don't know. I believe that there's honest integrity that you just displayed that I don't have. I'll give you an example. Yeah. My best friend happens to be a woman, and to be honest, most of my close friends are women. And she was the best chick at my wedding, right? I didn't even have a best man because I don't know a dude that well. I don't trust a dude like that.
Yeah.
And my brother was in my wedding as an example, and it wasn't even him. So she has a less scrupulous ability to pick her partners.
Yeah.
She is definitely a more promiscuous individual with both genders. And she has definitely been a cheater, like with receipts. And my wife knows it. My wife judges her different than I do because I'm thinking, you're a grown ass adult. I am not running cover, acting funny. I'm not going to go out of my way like you said. You're not going to go out of your way to throw him under the bus, but I'm not going to run cover for this person either.
So
whereas, Holly just doesn't want to involve herself in it, which is smart. It's not her business. But because I know and because she'll tell me this kind of stuff, I'm like, I mean, I don't think that's a good idea, but what am I going to do? Stand in front of you and he's going to poke me with his dick first? No. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to get in the way of you and your decisions. You're a grown-ass adult. Responsibility will take place. You know?
Yeah. I will say this too, which is that I have, if for example, I was dealing, like if I found out you were doing some side shit with Holly, or on Holly, or whatever. I don't know the word. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
I do.
With another person that's not Holly.
You were out and about with someone who's not Holly.
I wouldn't run cover. I would probably try to stay out of it. And so if you brought the other girl out or you brought Holly back out after we had met the other girl, I'd probably not say anything.
Based on your other response, you'd say something to me after, like, what the fuck are you doing?
I would say that.
You absolutely would say that.
But then if you said to me, oh, well, if you gave me a reason that I thought was, I know that, like, there's a lot of people that think, like, cheating's never never the answer. And I think that like most often that's not. But I listened to a podcast with Dan Savage 3-4 years ago, and he said, this was at the beginning of COVID, and he was like, unfortunately, there's going to be some cheating going on right now because people are in situations in which if they tried to leave, it would endanger them. So like usually, like if you're unhappy,
Okay, I didn't think about it that way.
But like there's also like if you're in an abusive relationship and you're finding comfort somewhere else, I'm not going to judge. I will zero judge you on it, on cheating.
Yeah.
And if you're in a neglectful relationship, or literally if like they talk about these things. There was a whole bunch of reasons why Dan Savage gave, and I apologize for not remembering them better, but like I think there are reasons why. And I like my dad, for example, if he was sitting here talking to the two of us right now about this, he'd be like, there's never a good reason ever for any reason. And like I say that we watched like a 60 Minutes or one of those news shows maybe 15-20 years ago where a woman, her husband was fully like gone mentally, like Alzheimer's or dementia, and she had a new boyfriend, and my dad was disgusted. Like, and the boyfriend would come help take care of the husband, who was like basically like drooling. Like he was like basically in a vegetative state. To me, that's not cheating. I mean, I guess technically yes, but like in a lot of the like I basically have told Sarah, because I was watching a show that has that on it too in the last week or two. I said, if I'm ever in a vegetative state or I'm gone mentally, you have my permission. You have my blessing. And if you ever I don't want you spend, like, because sometimes people are in a state for 30 years, and that doesn't mean.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not saying I would judge. I'm just saying I'm not necessarily
Them not moving on also says something about them, but that's a whole another episode topic.
Well, I mean, like
them not being able to go, this is not for me anymore. I'm not staying with you just because like I need to change your diaper and feed you. Like, no. Leave me. Please leave me. No. Sign the papers. Leave me. Like
I will. My father-in-law, his mother him and his father always tell us like, oh, she's not doing too well, and then we see her and we're like, she's doing the same. Like, I've known her for 14 years. I'm like, she doesn't look like she's aged in 14 years. The two of you look like you've aged. We went and saw his mother because she wasn't doing too great this past week, and she looked perfectly fine, and she seemed perfectly fine. And we get in the car later on. He goes, if I'm still around at like 88, just shoot me. And I was like, oh, don't worry. Pillow over your face.
Oh, don't worry. I'll make sure of it. No, so I don't think so. You obviously have more integrity than me because I believe I bear zero responsibility to someone else's bad moves.
Okay, I want to ask you a second thing based on what you just said.
Go for it.
In this scenario, you're not married, you're not in a relationship.
Okay.
You meet a woman who you find attractive, and she seems to find you attractive. You find out she's married, and then you pursue the relationship with her.
Meaning you continue to pursue.
Are you like it hasn't really crossed any lines. You find out she's married, and then you continue towards crossing lines. Do you consider yourself a cheater or just her? And I say this, the whole time. I'm not saying.
Yeah, I know the whole time.
So like, it's not like one of these ones where you're like, oh, I found out a year into the relationship that he had a wife, because that can happen, and that I think is different.
May I add a third possibility, or is this an intentional? You need to answer one of these two.
Add the intentionality, or add the third thing, and we'll discuss.
You're a cheater, meaning her.
Yeah.
You both are. My third one is you're just complicit. You're not actually cheating on anyone. That's really what I think it is. So is there fault? Is there blame? Is there responsibility? Oh, you absolutely bear some responsibility. You're continuing. You became aware, or worse, knew the whole time, and you're continuing. Yeah. Guess what? It doesn't make you're going to feel like the savior. You're possibly even going to be made to be, you possibly are even going to be made to feel like a white knight. because you're coming in here and saving her from this horrible relationship he's in. By the way, men listeners or people that are being pursued in that way listeners, that's not okay. And anybody advertising that you're that much of a savior may very well not really be what you're doing. Keep that in mind. Keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah.
So for me, I believe that you're in the wrong because you're complicit. You're an accessory to the crime, if we're going to be literal with it. But at the same time, the only one who's cheating or committing adultery is her.
Okay.
Period.
I'm on now that you've added your third thing, I'm kind of on there with you, but I was going to say that I think that that's cheating as well. Assuming you know.
Yeah, if you have to pick one, obviously it's going to be you're cheating because you literally are not, or you both are because you're literally not able to say, well, I wasn't cheating. Dude, you knew. Well, it wasn't me. I'm not married. And because the reason you bear responsibility is because the idea of a committed sexual relationship, because let's be literal here when we're talking about cheating, as we're getting a little off topic of objectification, but you objectified this individual.
Mm-hmm.
You became interested in them. You knew from the get that you were going to be assisting this individual in walking out on their current relationship. You know full well that you're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. You know full well, and the reason you bear some responsibility, audience, is because you know. If you take out adultery and say that you both went in to rob a store, but because you ran out and because you were distracting the clerk while your friend ran out with the goods, you weren't actively stealing anything, but you're an accessory. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, the reason I want to put that third one there is because you're eventually, especially if you're getting baited the way I've been baited before into that, you're going to be deep mentally in the relationship, and you're going to feel like the right thing to do is to continue it, because you're going to think, how could I ever end such a good thing I've got going for me? How could I ever send you back to this horrible person you have back home? Especially if you've never met him, how do you know? How do you know? You're only literally hearing one side of that entire scenario. So the objectification, I don't believe there's any blame in that, because that you do solo.
Yeah.
At least usually.
Yeah, objectification, I think, is not inherently problematic. It's like,
it felt it when I was younger, though.
I used to, I don't know how Episcopalian is, but in Catholicism, are you a George Carlin fan?
Oh, yeah.
George Carlin has the bit about if you want to commit a sin, you go out to commit a sin, you've actually committed 6 sins, because you wanted to commit a sin, you planned to commit a sin, you put into action to commit a sin, you commit this, and he does the thing. But he goes, that first thing, if you want to commit a sin, don't even bother going out to do it, because you succeeded, because wanna is a sin. I don't believe that anymore. And he didn't believe that when he was saying it. He was saying that's what Catholics believe. But growing up, I thought that, wanna was a sin. And so, it is a hard... So, objectification can be the same thing, where you're kind of I'm thinking these thoughts, but, as long as you, A, know how to keep them in check so that you're not acting on them, or you're not acting on them in any kind of irresponsible or harmful way, then that's okay. It's if I'm at the gym on the treadmill and someone comes onto the treadmill in front of me. This happens more often than I don't go behind any women at the treadmill because I don't want to look like a pervert. But it's a busy gym. No,
right? How I was about to say, how are you not able to do that? Just do it.
Well,
Stop.
It's a busy gym. Well, I just pick a treadmill that doesn't have anybody in front of it.
Yeah, fair.
But if I'm on the treadmill for 30 minutes, someone's getting on the treadmill in front of me every single time.
Yep.
And pretty much regardless of what age that woman is or what shape that woman is, I'm looking at the ass. I'm looking at the ass, and I'm doing the calculations in my head.
Absolutely. I'll guess how many inches.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. No.
But I don't stare, and I try not to do anything that is making anybody else uncomfortable.
You and I probably look super awkward doing that. We might even be more obvious trying not to than if we just were like, nice cheeks.
Me running on the treadmill. No, I just kind of keep my eyes forward. But also, you got to keep in mind that this is the face I'm making when I'm running on the treadmill most of the time. And it's that before the woman shows up in front of me. So I'm just like,
you are closing, my sir, with that face.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm probably one of the 3 or 4 heaviest guys at the gym. So
it's usually me too.
Yeah.
I like
big butts, and you cannot lie.
Look, every brother of mine can't deny there's only one of them, but there's a lot for me because I have such an active mind and because I have such an active sexual mind and imagination. Objectification, I've normalized it. Like I honestly cannot, like the only time that I think I've ever felt bad, and I say felt because it's me on my own, objectifying someone is when I find out they are not of age. That is literally the only time where if I'm not looking at someone with sexual urges, that I feel bad for doing it. I literally don't otherwise. If they're an adult and I'm doing this all on my own in my head, I'm chill with it, but I'm not chill being attracted to children, so I won't go there. And that is my only line. So I've normalized it so much that I have so little shame of it, and that is the polar opposite of when I was younger. Now, you have a child. You are around children and other parents much more often than I am. Do you have any negative isn't even the right word. Do you ever, like I said, feel bad? Are there ever any times you're like, well, that was a bad fucking idea? Like, do you ever or no?
Not objectification wise. I mean, yeah, there's occasionally you'll see a mom that's like hot at school stuff
all the fucking time, dude.
I like recording these episodes where I don't know if we're gonna have anything not for patrons.
No, we're going to. You know it.
Yeah.
I believe that objectification. I think that is there a gender bias to it? I think there's a believed gender bias, but I bet you it's not really there. How about that?
I think that it's
supposed.
I think that how the average way that genders express objectification is probably different. So like for us, it's like check out the tits on her, and for women, it like literally, and I feel like women have to do so much searching for what they find attractive about us disgusting meat flesh.
It's kind of true.
So they're like, well, I really like
he has great
a strong
hair.
jawline, and it's like a jawline. You like a jawline
turns you on
because they're reaching for straws. They're certainly not this piece of silly putty between our legs. So
it's true.
Although for some women, I think that probably is the case. But like my point being, like I think there's just a little more universal attractiveness to women.
Yeah.
I was like, and part of that is evolution, right? Like we, the reason why we like big butts or wide hips is because it means
we
that
are like, deep
we're
gray matter programmed to think that will make and carry healthy children. Like it's literal like caveman shit. Yep. Yes. But objectification carries, like with my brother, it carries a stigma, but he hasn't fully embraced his just be a cool ass sexual adult. Like he has 2 children. It's not like he doesn't have a thing, but he won't even. He was the one that, like, if he caught me checking out a woman that we both worked with, he'd be like, Alexander, stop. I would never say that to him. Like he's immediately trying to, don't do that. But then if I noticed he was doing it after she'd walk away, I'd be like, so he'd be like, yeah, you fucking kidding? Like he and I can have that banter, but that's how I would approach him doing it. He would be like, stop looking at your chest, dude. God, like, and this was even a few years ago, he was like that. So this is
Yeah.
not even pre or post children, he was like that.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of those things that comes with maturity.
Yeah. Oh, for
After you
sure.
have more self-awareness, you understand that it's not bad. It needs to be in balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like this evil deed
Well,
that you're committing, you know?
Well, and what I said earlier about the like knowing your audience is something that I learned with time. Like 15 plus years ago, I actually remember a very specific incident. A woman walked into Verizon, and I leaned over to one of my coworkers, and I don't remember what coworker, but I would have done it to any single one of my coworkers, so it doesn't matter, right? And I said, I want her to sit on my face.
Oh, I've said that.
Yeah, I would say that.
Dude,
I would say that. I would say that to certain people now, like jokingly, but like I was 100% serious, and I would have said it to literally anybody in the room. Yeah. I probably would have said it to the person if I thought that I wasn't going to get like smacked. And now I would not do that. That was like fucked up.
Why?
That was. Look, if like I would say it to Sarah, I would say it to like once we've built up a context. But I wouldn't like walk up to a stranger and be like, I want you to sit on my face. That's
sorry. You're actually saying this to the person.
Yeah.
So when you were at Verizon, you straight said this to the customer?
No. I didn't. It was, first of all, it wasn't a customer.
You were saying it to the coworkers, right? That's what I'm saying. So now,
but what I'm
you
saying
wouldn't even tell the coworkers?
It depends on the coworker. At the time, it did not depend.
So at the time, you were
I would have said it to management.
Like
I would have said it to management. I would have, if was there, 20 years ago, I'd have been like, oh my God, you see that? Like I didn't give a shit. I mean, partly I hated that job and was ready to get fired. At that point, and I don't know that has changed, obviously.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
kind of.
So you had less self-control.
No, I had full self. I've never had no self-control. So I will say, my sister and my mother used to say, Michael has no filter, and I'd be like, no, I have a filter. No, I don't say this shit in front of Grandpa. I said, I don't have a give a fuck. That's different than not having a filter.
Oh, it's very different. Yes.
Now I have a give a fuck in the way that I don't want to be like saying what saying like, oh, I would like her to sit on my face. Feels like, especially depending on who you're saying it to in the context, it feels like you're borderline sexually harassing the person you're saying it to about the other person. That's why I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Depends on who you're saying it to.
Yeah. No, and now like, I'm understanding how you see that.
Thinking about our workplace.
I was about to mention, because I wouldn't say this to anybody I work with, but no women that I work with, or even men, I'm comfortable saying that to because I don't trust them.
Yeah.
But also, you and I are in a workplace with a definite age gap to a bunch of our coworkers. So,
my point being, think about my point being hypothetical, but like I wouldn't. The people that I would say that to at work right now are you,
me,
and maybe Zach.
Yeah, true. Okay.
Right now, I don't know. I don't have a good example of somebody that I would even say that about. I would like, and we're not in retail, so it's not like people are coming and going all the time. So it's a different situation. And Verizon
was the same audience every day.
When I worked at Verizon, it was the Wild West. I was working with 3 women I had sex with at any given time. So it was the Wild West.
So you had a wireless phone harem.
Yeah. I mean, I was a fuckboy.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm saying, like,
this is the Mike I do not know.
Well, this is the Mike that doesn't exist anymore.
Fair. So the objectification you just had less self-control about who you said it to, whereas now.
No, I just feel A, I have things to not want to get fired for. B, I don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
By saying it to them. C, I am aware that sometimes, because I think I've mentioned this too. I have friends that like don't know when you can't. Like I have a friend who is a good person, but he's not great at it. And so like if I said to you, hey, like I don't know, if I said like Alex, you weirdo with a beardo, like we had some like inside joke between the two of us, and he was hanging out with us and had never met you before, he'd start calling you weirdo with a beardo because he doesn't get it. So I wouldn't say certain things like that to him now because I know I wouldn't say, and he's not a bad intention person. He's just, and there's lots of guys though, especially when you bring in girls. Like I had a friend that I worked with who said some wild shit to Sarah because, well, she's Mike's girlfriend. Like this was when we first started dating. He said some wild shit to her.
Doesn't mean it's okay.
And that's why we're no longer like friends.
Right. I was like,
the friendship kind of faded after that point, but like that was the moment when like, oh, you're no longer going to be one of the groomsmen at my wedding because you said some fucked up shit to the bride. And then but that was the beginning of the end of our friendship because so like I've learned that you can't, not everyone's as socially aware to be same thing. Like you don't, I would say stuff to Adam and I wouldn't say stuff to that. I would say stuff to Adam that I wouldn't say in front of or to a racist person because they will take that as permission.
When you mentioned that, I immediately attached and understood exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
Because like Holly and I will even say, oh, I don't want to even give this person the idea that that's who I am, what I am, how I think, how I vote, where I sit in a political issue.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's stuff that I'm even now thinking, I might not say that to that person.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas before, I would probably feel comfortable doing it because, like you just said, the permission, that's exactly how I kind of conduct myself in public. I don't want to engage with this person because I've already judged how they'll act. If I was to say, or even if I was just to engage them, no matter what I would say. So, I can see that.
There's a comedian I like, I think his name is Matthew Broussard. I'll see if I can find the clip and I'll attach it. But I'm going to spoil the joke, so it doesn't matter. But he talks about how he's a really like good looking white guy, but he says I'm mostly progressive. He goes, I agree with most progressive points of view. There are some times when I become uncomfortable all of a sudden. And he goes, for example, like, defund the police. Well, yeah, there's stuff I can get behind on that. Like, and he lists all these things. And then he goes, all white men suck. And he goes, well, let's pump the brakes on that. And then he goes, and then you like feel like a presence behind you over your shoulder. Tell him, brother. And then I'm like, well, I don't want them to hate me because I'm a white man, but I don't want you to like me because I'm a white man. It's such a good joke.
I like that. I don't want them to like me, but I don't want them to hate me for the same reason.
And then he goes, as soon as I go cross the line as a comedian and get canceled, I'm on your side. But for right now, I want to be away from you.
Until shit hits the fan.
Yeah,
I'm over here. Okay. Yeah. All right.
You ready to wrap it up?
I am. I think we've objectified our audience enough for having to listen to all this.
Checking out these two big boobs on the screen.
I know.
Oh, I didn't mean these. I meant you are a boob and I'm a boob.
Oh, so together we make
it was a pair of boobs. It was
I really, it's better than a mono tit. That's kind of weird. I really think that objectification for me to close went from bad deed, ew, gross, what are you doing, to there's no way this isn't natural, to now it's 100% normalized for me and it's a kink and it's exciting and it's fun to use that as a tool in a relationship.
Yeah. Everything is context. And objectification is that too. So this is how I explained to Logan a couple years ago the idea of context. I said,
how do you explain
objectification
to Logan?
This was in regards to swearing, but it works with any kind of it. Basically, they have moderation and context. And so I said to Logan, I said, swearing is fine. There's nothing wrong with swearing, but that doesn't mean you do it all the time. Doesn't mean you do it everywhere. I said there is nothing wrong.
Oh my gosh, I like that.
There's nothing wrong with pooping. But if you go to somebody's house and in the middle of their dining room take a shit,
if you just Amber Heard that shit,
then there is something wrong with it. It's not because shitting is bad. It doesn't make you bad to be a person who
because of where
shits.
you live.
Everyone shits, but context is you shit in a toilet, or a diaper if you're young enough or old enough.
Yeah.
But like, and so I said that, and kids get it, and you don't have to say shit. You can say poop, but that's how, like, the greatest way to explain context is poop. Like, you understand, because 9 out of 10 people understand that. Maybe 99 out of 100.
Yeah, no, how you're describing this, I like this. Seriously, where,
yep,
and to who, or with who is absolutely like that tipping point. It's not that it's bad. It's where you're doing it.
To extend it to the objectification thing, it's also about how you manage it. So with pooping, if you go into the bathroom at a party and you need to poop and you poop, that's fine. If you come out into the party and go, I just took the biggest shit, that's kind of like being like, did you see the chick with the giant titties? Like,
okay, fair. All right.
So,
what a good wrap up. That totally seals it. I like that. All right. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the three of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.